Hello. Welcome to this next third, I think we're on, Dev Log vid. Again, we're looking at the lore. Today we are looking at Duchy of Calestry. Where to begin? At the beginning, I suppose. So Calestry was founded about 6,000 years before the Union. It is the oldest kingdom on Calestrians, sort of beating Lars by about a year-ish. Lars itself wasn't actually founded until quite a lot of it had actually been built up, whereas with Calestry, well, it was pretty much ready and ready to go within 3 or 4 years of the creation of Calestrians. So it has three provinces. Yeah. Capital province is Valheim. Capital city is Valheim. The sort of the running theme you'll find is that the capital province and the capital city tend to have the same name. The sort of more Urch-based sort of farming region is Unheron. Again, this is where you need to find mostly elves. You need to find a lot of elves in Valheim, but it's fairly mixed. Mostly elves and forest and Unheron. And then down the south you've got Kraftek, which is slightly more human than elf, but still fairly elf heavy. Again, mostly forest. Founded 6,000 years before unification by Saint Valheim. There's a theme. Valheim at the time was a priest of Lehenum, because Lehenum was really the only god that existed at the time, barring Leviathan and Cadus, but they're a different story. Because Uatara and Watik weren't aspects that existed at the time. They used the World Loom, which is really one of the most powerful religious artifacts in Idir. He used it to sort of alter Calestry a little bit, because when Lehenum first created, sort of wove the island of Calestrians into being. He left a little bit of a blank canvas, really. There's three distinct biomes, but he sort of lacked a bit of character and personalisation. So Saint Valheim took the loom first to make Calestry what it is today. That really hasn't changed in the past 6,000 years. He built the holy city of Valheim, using the loom to sort of mark its final resting place. The city of Valheim itself is a shining beacon of sort of the virtues of Calestry. I skipped forward a couple of 100 years, about 300-400 years, and the advent of the aspects of Lehenum. Valheim sort of converted to Uatara pretty much immediately. And Calestry is very much a pacifist state. Unlike its contemporary Lars, it didn't go for the whole aggressive push to colonise Calestrians. Lars, on the other hand, did. And the two states have been intertwined their entire history. I cannot talk about the history of one without mentioning the other. So I'm not going to. I'm going to do an entirely separate video on that. Normally with these videos about the different states I would go into their history, but I can't really with this, because is you start on a Calestry explanation and you flip over to the last read just like that. But back to the subject at hand. So Calestry is a pacifist state. It follows a fairly sort of unique brand of Utaranism you don't really see elsewhere within Edveredia. And that it is fanatically pacifist. It is illegal in Calestry to carry lethal weapons. It's a fairly nebulous bylaw, because really what counts as a lethal weapon. It's an odd place. For the most part, peaceful. But it's not perfect. Again, it's verdant pacifism led to in the past a lot of conflict between itself and Lars and Toscan when that finally showed up about 4,000 years ago. And that it sort of, when fights broke out, Calestry didn't bother getting involved. Before the formation of Volscalen as a state, it was protected to the north by the Vastran Last, by the Frost Sea, and to the west, it has thick forests sort of all along this region here. Then it's got desert, so getting into desert in the south. So it's really difficult to invade Calestry. So it's sort of safe in its pacifism. It sort of leads to complacency. It's got problems like the rest of Edveridia. Certainly, sort of in present day Edveridia, it has possibly the worst banditry problem of the three. It doesn't have a standing army. Again, part of its sort of pacifist outlook on things. There are city guards, but they're not allowed to. And they're not allowed to go. Violence is always the last resort, and unfortunately, the people that sort of the bandits that plague Calestry do not give a shit about pacifism. Most of them get brought up on charges of carrying lethal weapons. So, it's fairly complacent in those regards. That isn't to say it isn't completely pacifist. There are some people who have learned combat in the vein of self-defense. Certainly, unarmed martial arts are favoured within Calestry, and any armed martial arts are purely for subduing. But again, this is not where it stops. Calestry has always had the weirdest. Again, I've already mentioned it has a really weird sort of approach to the worship of Utara, and it spawned a hell of a lot of cults. A lot of really, really weird cults. So despite it being mostly farming, and wine exports, a lot of wine. There's just this entire area of the Valheim Peninsula. Is grapes. This area around Valheim, so the rural area is referred to as the grapes. Because I'm original. They've had some really fucking weird, really weird religious cults. The two major ones that are active at the moment, the cult of Utara, the church, of Utara's Retribution, are They're assassins. Let's be blunt about it. They are sort of the Calestrian contemporaries to the Mololithi that operate out of Alskillen. They are the only people in Calestry who are allowed to carry lethal weapons, and it's only ever one, and it's their oath weapon. So basically, the Church of Watara was founded about 20 years after the Union, in OTAR 20, when the whole, basically, the Arl of Lars at the time, Arl Adanadar, decided that he was going to go fucking claim the worldling for Lars, and try and march. Well, he did. He marched his troops all the way across Caltanadir, got to Valheim, ending Nord. A massive warning that sort of covers that's carved into the gates of Valheim at the top of the hill. And it basically says, "Don't spill blood in Valheim." It's frowned upon to spill blood in Calestry anyway, but in Valheim it is divinely enforced. And in a tale I'll go through in a later episode, Adanadar killed the guards of the gate and cursed himself, his entire army, and basically all of Lars. At that point, the family of those guards and a load of their friends, all devout Watarans, sort of got together and thought, sometimes you just got to stab a fucker. Their approach to Wataranism is that at the end of the day, Watara is a mother, and a mother wolf will attack if her children are threatened. A mother boar will attack if their children are threatened. Mother deer will attack. You can't know where I'm coming from. You attack someone's children, the mom's going to strike back. So that was their ethos to begin with. It still sort of is today, and that's sometimes the enemy of the church. Just gotta you got to get slitty sometimes with the people that I don't want to say fall out of line, because that's not correct. It's not what they do. Again, enemy of the church. Again, not really what they do. But they are assassins. Church appointed assassins. They're saying that the head of the church of the God Speaker of Tara certainly won't admit to their existence. They're saying that. Some people are open about it. Currently the church's ethos is stay your blade from those who don't deserve it. If they attack you, slit them. If they don't, let them be. They're weird. Not as weird as the next cult. Cult of Innocence is Wataranism taken to a major extreme, for some bloody reason. I created them. I don't understand their fucking their fucking motives or ethics or ethos. So the Church of Innocent, the Cult of Innocence, sorry, they are a cult, not a church, are all about purity of the soul. That their belief that you can truly sort of they believe that if you die with a tainted soul, you will be reborn with a tainted soul. Reincarnation is very much supported by all the churches. and the cult of innocence take it to a ridiculous extreme. They are Puritan monks is possibly the best the best sort of analog I can form for these. They believe in innocence of the blood and innocence of the flesh and of the soul, but not innocence of the law. The law is mundane. It's a man-made thing. The oath of innocence is take no life, create no life. As simple as that. No killing, no fucking. And some take it to horrific extremes. We're talking wearing masks and carrying a broom to sweep the ground before you, so as not to stand on insects. Others are a little bit more laid back and apply it to sort of a slightly more macro level. All of them are abstinent, just in case. I have no idea what. I say I have no idea what Siren Children has to do with purity of the soul. A slight bias, but they're weird, man. They're odd. Yeah. Whether or not their ethos is the correct way about going things, no one's figuring it out. But yeah. But back to the whole sort of legal innocence not being a thing they really give a shit in. If you want something dodgy doing, you go to there, provided it doesn't involve, killing someone. Yeah, a lot of them in the Idir Mafia, a lot. They don't like the Church of Watara's retribution. The rest of the Church of Watara are okay with their existence. They understand where they're coming from. Cult of Innocence just don't like them at all. They think they're damning themselves to an eternity of taint. I would say eternal torture, but you don't go to the pit if you die with sins on your soul. You sort of dissipate. Non-existence is what they're afraid of. They fear the Church of Leviathan, something stupid. Yeah, if they see a member of the Church of Leviathan, they'll fucking turn the other direction and run. Yeah. Big. There's a big sort of a large religious presence in Calestry, but they have separated church and state. That was always something they did. Unlike Toscan, as I'll mention in a later episode of Toscan, separating church and state is fairly new. Calestry's been doing it the entire 6,000 years it's existed. It understands. Yeah. So. Relationships. I would have to talk about relationships with their sibling nations. Relationship with Osculin is interesting. Again, Osculin isn't that old. It's only about 400 years old. 500 years old at this point, ish. And initially they started off a little bit rocky. But before Osculin was declared a separate state, the area is known as Vastranlas, the Frost Sea, and Calestry owned this bit, so the western southern bit, so the west of Hores and south of Caltelhalau, sorry, and basically the entirety of the north of Hores is impassable ice floes, always has been. But the south of Hores and Caltelhalau are seasonally fertile land. It's where the snow elves live. And as I mentioned earlier, snow elves. Not too happy when Calestrian last decided to civilize Vastranlas. We'll skip through. Basically, Calestry got the brunt of the raids because that's where they settled in snow elf lands. Last got off fairly lightly, to be honest. But when it came to dealing with Ulskillen as a separate province, Duchy, Ulst never really put in the effort. They thought, right, the Valnorthen's built, they've got a government installed, it's, no point putting in the effort anymore. Calestry, on the other hand, went, well, we'll just let bygones be bygones. To be honest, we've trespassed on the land, and they drove us out successfully. So what Calestry did is they worked on developing their relations with the Nuldan Urch and the government of Valnorthen. And they became fairly fast friends. There's a lot of stuff that Calestry exports, namely food and clothing, that you just can't get in Ulskillen because it's a barren, snowy wasteland. So, like, I don't know, Fife. I don't know, maybe Fife. Yeah. So Calestry and Ulskillen are, to this day, best of friends. Calestry provides them with food and clothing. Ulskillen provides them with mercenaries. The Mololithy. There are a lot of Mololithy stationed in Calestry, despite their laws of disarmament. The Church of Utara very much looks the other way. So the government Calestry basically doesn't know. It's sort of the Mololithy are tolerated because they are, like Church of Utara, a religious order. They're the Mortique side of the assassin Colcoin. They are older. Actually, it was the Mololithy that taught the Church of Utara everything they know. Bar certain things, of course, because church stuff. So they get on quite well. The only thing about Ulskillen that rubs Calestry the wrong way is just how devout they are when it comes to the worship of Mortique. But to be honest, when you live in a barren frozen wasteland, death looks favourable. That makes sense. Neighbours to the south, Toscan. Toscan and Calestry are fairly similar in terms of sort of religious views. Toscan being the other major Utaran state. Formerly the Holy Land of Utara. It's Calestry now, surprise, surprise. But back in the day when the Kolfa of Toscan was both the Godspeaker and the Lisked, Utara looked upon Toscan very favourably, which you want when you live in a desert. So Calestry and Toscan get on. They're not like busy mates, like Ulskillen and Calestry are, but they get on. They trade. There's a lot of stuff. Toscan's a very rich duchy, always has been. A lot of gold mines and precious gems in there. And when you need to upkeep your shining city, which is mostly marble and gold, you kind of need to get it imported from your neighbours down south and be on good terms with them. So they get on, but it's more of a working relationship than a friendship. Zalvaras, Calestry think very highly of. Most of them do, actually. But most of the duchies think highly of Zalvaras, and that's not just because Zalvaras are in charge. Zalvaras represents sort of what the Union should be, as to put it what it actually is. Calestry are fairly on board with Alvarez's forward-thinking policies. They are they agree with the Industrial Revolution that's happening with Alvarez. Not too happy to allow the mass industrialization to sort of creep across the border, though. But again, other than that, Calestry are big fans of Alvarez, big supporters of their independence as well. When that came about halfway through the Union. Their views on Lars I've probably pretty much summed up at this point. They're known as the sibling duchies for a reason. They were both founded within a year of each other. They're both arch-heavy duchies. They're both classified as archduchies, despite the fact the human nobility in Lars run it. They're the oldest two duchies. Again, Calestry older by about a year. So they very much have a sibling relationship, which is they bicker constantly. Lars just cannot wrap its head around Calestry's pacifism. Most of Edveridia can't wrap its head around Calestry's pacifism, but Lars even less so. Lars is very much of the opinion that they had destiny manifest. Calestry were quite happy to just sit back and let them do it, whilst complaining at them from inside their golden marble temples, saying, "Grr, stop it." Lars going, try and stop me." Calestry going, "Nah, mate, can't be fucked." We'll let Toscan do it instead. And Toscan didn't. Yeah, so in recent years, the relationship between the two has soured massively. Again, the Calestry are not a fan of the nobility of Lars, which are 99% human. Because they're all dicks. They can't stand the underhand repression of the Urch that's going on in Lars. Which makes sense. Calestry is majorly an Urch nation. Duchy, sorry, not a nation anymore. But yeah, Lars has done some shit to Calestry the past 300 years. That they can't. Again, this is a video, an entirely separate video talking about their joint history, because I mean, at one point they were neighbours. Alvarez had only existed for about 200 years or so as a separate duchy, so they were neighbours for a bloody long time. But yeah, on an individual level, people from Calestry, people from Lars tend to get on. Governmental level, they don't get on at all. On a religious level, Calestry's banging its head against a brick wall. Lars is mostly secular, despite its flag containing the triple iconography of Lehenism. But yeah, they're basically siblings. And Muharrem, I can't think of a duchy that isn't fucking terrified of the dwarves. Calestry even more so. Mainly because they can't understand how Muharrem's fucking put up with Lars over the past 6,000 years. Because Lars is very much... Muharrem was, for a good portion of 6,000 years, surrounded by Lars on all sides. With Toscan taking out the south. But with the formation of Volskel and Alvarez, they've just become their recent neighbours, and Calestry cannot for the life of them understand why the dwarves haven't just kicked him into the sea yet, because they can. Maharam is a terrifying nation, but they're lovely. And Calestry is rightly scared of them. And the tower, the Isle of Lahanum to the west. Calestry think of them as brave idiots. They've got the Pit of Cadus on that island. Calestry are not a big fan of Cadus. So the Church of Tara in Calestry is the reason people think Cadus as this antithesis to Lahanum and its creations. It's really not. And even sort of nowadays they're starting to get that through their heads, but it's such an old view, and they are a fairly conservative nation, state, duchy, not a nation anymore. Are a fairly conservative duchy in terms of, again, culture and socioeconomics haven't really changed over the past 6-7 years. They just can't get it. It's sinking in very, very slowly. But yeah, I think for now that's all I've got to say on Calestry. Pardon me. Yeah, it's old. It's pacifist, not necessarily peaceful. Despite the fact I've said it's peaceful many times. But it's interesting. Certainly one of my favourites. If you can really have favourites for a game you created. Yeah. This video ended up being longer than I thought it was going to be. But so yeah. Next time we will have a chat about Laos. We have a lot to say. They're an interesting peoples. And then at some point I'll go over the joint history before I get into the other duchies. But yeah, see you next time.